Welcome to It Was an Animal Attack spin-offs. I'm Sandile, and my darling co-host Fadzai is not currently here. This is a new series called Spin-offs. It's where we're putting clips of discussion or bits about shows, movies, books, basically any media that for whatever reason we cut out from the main episodes. You're going to be getting these every now and then. There's not going to be a strict schedule. It's unstructured, unthemed, slightly incoherent. It's whatever we want. But today, you will be getting mostly bits from the recent Enzo episode. Make sure to check the description wherever you're listening to this, and you should see timestamps to all the different topics that we speak about, so you can kind of skip around if you want to. But otherwise, enjoy. Let us know what you think. Without further ado, here is the inaugural spin-off.
It Was an Animal Attack spin-off episode selected.
Right at the end of the show, when everyone had given up. Truly watching some of these performances is like, oh, you knew it was over also.
It's the foreshadowing of Game of Thrones season 8 for me as a person who was a big fan of both shows.
Oh man, Game of Thrones was a retroactive exercise for me in realizing, oh, that was a swan dive at the end there. I didn't fully clock it in the moment because I think it's the first show I watched where it felt epic and it felt like I was on time. We've had this conversation where it's like, I was a very sheltered kid, so I was always late to things that people were watching in real time. And Game of Thrones is one of the first thing that I was watching week to week. I think it was the Arrowverse and it was Game of Thrones. So I remember staying up until like 3 a.m. because that was the time we got the episode because of time zones. And it was just all very exciting. So I was sort of in it at the time and didn't really put together until well afterwards my thoughts of like, oh, wait, hold on. Let's look back on actually how bad it was at the end there. I remember sending a very long voice note to my friend in which I listened back to it a couple months after on a whim. But even in that, I was trying to couch all my opinions and like, it was still good, but this happened. But you know, that was fun, but this happened. And looking back, I'm like, I don't know why I was giving it so much grace. Because I wasn't as cutthroat as I am now.
I was so over it by season 8. See, Game of Thrones, I had deluded myself, because it was already starting to to desiccate, to use a Vampire Diaries by like season 6. But I kept telling myself, no, it's fine. It'll all be worth it when we make it to the end. The end will be worth it. This is a rough patch in the middle. This is a show that's based on a really popular book. It's not like an in-name only adaptation like Vampire Diaries became. I was like, it'll be fine. At the end, it'll all be worth it. When they fight the White Walkers, it'll be worth it. And then I heard that season 8 was coming out a year later than season 7, and I was like, see, they're fixing it. This makes sense. And then I heard that season 8 was going to have 6 episodes, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. The shrinking episode count was really the thing that even I was like, oh, that's odd. Okay.
And then the White Walkers were gone by episode 4, and I was like, Cersei is the final boss?
Yeah.
What?
I guess don't have the cognizance in the moment of a thing to realize all its flaws. I used to say this a lot. I used to be like, I'm very easy to impress if you put a visual medium in front of me. I don't know if it's the ADHD or whatever, but you put enough flashing lights and enough like movement in front of me.
That's how I feel about the MCU, which everyone hates now. And so I'm like, I'm not calling this amazing cinema. I don't want to get shot by Martin Scorsese, but I'm just saying I'm not as deeply disappointed in it as
my grandfather
else.
Out of this. I don't have enough of an opinion about the MCU because I have not been watching it for the last 2 years, so I couldn't tell you the quality.
Well, I mean, people felt like that already with like Eternals and Love and Thunder and Multiverse of Madness.
You know, I liked all 3 of those movies.
See, I might not be
Multiverse of Madness less so.
I might
Multiverse
not
of Madness
be
less so.
as in love with Love and Thunder as you are, but certainly I didn't walk out of that movie being like, oh, this is garbage.
This is the worst movie. This is awful. But then also it's like I have a more complex issue with the Thor franchise where it's like I'm committed now to this like complete left turn that is the Waikikification of Thor. Because everyone was real excited when we tossed away the original incarnation of
me.
Thor, right? The one that I really loved.
I wanted my
the
high
one
fantasy.
I loved more than the current incarnation. I liked high fantasy, space opera, whatever. It was a weird amalgam that strangely worked. And everybody was like, ooh, it's boring. Ooh, it's whatever. Everybody's speaking in a way I can't understand. And it's like, all right, cool.
It's like, maybe
fine.
read a
we'll
book.
Change it.
I don't know. Play some Elder Scrolls.
And then they changed it, right? And then they liked the first one, so Taika Waititi leaned into his typical style, because this is the kind of shit he does, where it's like he does the more playful, the more silly, and then like halfway through the thing, suddenly there's an emotional gut punch. That's what he does. And everybody was so happy the first time around, and now we're turning tail. No, stick with it. Stick to your guns. This is what you wanted. So I love Thor Love and Thunder. It's only like 25% a spite thing. The other 75%, I did genuinely go through that movie and I was like, this isn't the best Marvel movie, but what kind of benchmark is Marvel movie? To be fair, I enjoyed it.
I go into Marvel movies just thinking, I am a DC and Marvel comic book loving geek, and someone is making an adaptation about grown men and women flying around with superpowers, punching each other and firing off energy blasts. It's not that deep for me. I'm here to have fun. And then I'll go onto the internet, which I should stop doing, and there'll be people who are like, this is the worst thing ever put to screen. This is my Last Airbender.
Yeah. Oof. I mean, look, listen, there's the issue that's always going to come up in terms of adaptation, where it's like, if you're adapting a beloved source material, it's sometimes hard to make the distinction between like a choice made for adaptation because it works for the visual medium and someone fundamentally misunderstanding the text. And so sometimes those things blur together. I do think with the MCU, as we've seen very recently in some choices that have been made, they sometimes fundamentally misunderstand the text. So I can understand when people who love the source material see it kind of be butchered sometimes. Not all the time, but certainly sometimes. The MCU has also the issue, I mean, it's not what you're talking about. The people you're talking about aren't concerned about this, but there's the huge issue of ethnic erasure in the MCU.
Yeah.
Constantly erasing Romani characters, constantly erasing Jewish characters. Some people may feel some other type of way about that one, but it's like, every time they chip away at the goodwill that they've built up so well over 10 years, that it's like, oof, we're in a rough place. All that aside, just quality-wise, as projects, as movies and TV shows, some of them weren't the best. I'm not gonna lie. The Phase 5 was a little bit like touch and go, right? Like, it put out really great shows and then put out really shitty shows. Put out very mid movies. That's just the fact of the matter. And coming off of such a soaring climax of all the movies that were coming out in Phase 4 and the like Infinity War duo, on a certain level, it was always going to be impossible to maintain that height of like goodwill.
Yeah.
But also it's like, there's a bunch of problems in the MCU production where it's like, there's a reason why you guys are struggling to make it hit anymore. The whole regime has changed. You're spending a shit ton of money. You don't have like plans when it comes to how a project's gonna look until it's actually being done. Like, I wouldn't begrudge someone who is like, the MCU has been putting out some stinkers lately, because there's certainly evidence to that point. And there's certainly evidence to the fact that like, their system of production can only end in that. And then everything else beyond that is a matter of taste. Because The Eternals, visually stunning movie, it's a matter of taste whether you enjoyed it or not. Multiverse of Madness, visually stunning movie, it's a matter of taste whether you enjoyed it or not. It is also a matter of writers who don't know they're working in a shared universe. I think that's sometimes a difficulty too, where it's like, and that can happen at a writing level and at an executive level, where it's like you forget that you're in a shared universe and you're just trying to do your own thing with characters that have had prior events happen to them. For example, with Multiverse of Madness, everyone's biggest complaint, why is the Scarlet Witch suddenly so evil so quickly, considering the way we ended with WandaVision? And it's like, you spend weeks and weeks after the movies come out trying to like thread it together if you're someone trying to give the movie a generous read, like me. And then you found out the writers just decided they wanted to do the Scarlet Witch evil turn. They didn't want anyone else to get that. So they just kind of massaged it and made it work, quote unquote. So, you know, there's a number of different factors at play here.
I guess maybe my standards for the MCU have never been super high because I feel as though
Sure.
post Endgame, everyone's acting like this franchise, not specific movies, but the entire franchise had been a masterpiece. And only now, after Thanos' death, have there been all these flops. And I'm like, I was there in the 2010s when we all agreed that Iron Man 2 was exciting because Black Widow was showing up and the Avengers were being teased, but that villain
That villain was rough.
was unmemorable.
Villain was rough.
That Iron Man 3 also wasn't that great and didn't really make sense with where Tony ended up after that film.
Frankly, I like Iron Man 3 less than Iron Man 2. Controversial, hot take. I do not like that third movie.
Yeah, Iron Man 3 I've watched once by choice, another time because I was bored and it was on TV.
Woof.
And that's it.
I like bits and pieces of that, but 2 is a more cohesive movie in my opinion, even though the villain's shite. Sam Rockwell's there doing his Sam Rockwell thing, which is always going to be fun, even in a bad movie. Thor 1, which I love, kind of light.
Oh, everyone hates that one. I like that one, but people
People hate it because they're like, it's so boring. It takes place on this 2 square miles of New Mexico. And it's like, I can see that. It is very much a movie that takes place in this small area and the small set. But it's like, I really like the movie because it's got a character being broken down and built up and learning the true meaning of what a hero is. It's like good stuff. But people are going to like what they like. But to your point, people hated that movie. So, it's not always been a masterpiece. This franchise has hits and misses by design, I guess, by default. The Black Panther movies were both good. The Captain Marvel movie was very good, despite, people who are like, I have honest, genuine critiques that aren't just misogyny. And it's like, yeah, fair enough, I guess. The Black Widow movie, I liked. That's another one where I'm like, this is a good movie. We cannot escape the fact that they adapted a beloved character and changed them. I didn't care about the change because I'm like, I don't think Taskmaster is the person I'm hugely concerned about. And maybe that's the issue, right? I wouldn't understand like a Taskmaster diehard fan, which I didn't know that was even a thing.
People will lie to themselves.
Right. They might be upset when it turns out Taskmaster is an important character in the movie and not the dude that they're familiar with from the comics. And that can be upsetting. I had similar issues with adaptations in my own life where it's like, I really love the source material. What are you doing? You've massacred my boy. So I'm not going to act like I've never done that. I did like that movie, though. They should have done it much earlier.
Yeah,
because
it does kind of feel all for naught since we know she's dead.
We know she's dead the whole time, and it's unavoidable.
And she sacrificed herself specifically because she was like, between the two of us, bestie, you have a family that you can go home to, people who are waiting for you. I only have my teammates and work.
And then the movie
and
goes,
then suddenly it's like,
actually, I have a whole ass family. That I've died on. And now my sister's coming for you, bestie. So now it's like, damn, Black Widow, you're really screwed over Hawkeye in this moment. There's another show where it's like, largely inconsequential, what a fun time Hawkeye was. Came out at Christmas time. It was like a show for Hawkeye, who this franchise has largely not cared about. The thing is, I really like Hawkeye. Maybe not fully this incarnation, but Hawkeye has always been one of my favorites in the various Avengers stories of like the comics, the cartoons, whatever. I like Hawkeye. I just like a guy with a bow and arrow. What are you gonna do?
Really? That's my least favorite thing in a superhero story. Where I'm like,
yeah,
if you're fighting crime, and I know there's people who fight crime with just like badass skills but no powers, but I'm like, you're fighting crime with trick arrows in a world where there are laser guns and all sorts of things. I'm just like,
yeah, but that's what makes it cool. He can make an arrow that shoots a laser out of it. He does it in the show. He shoots an arrow that shoots out a bunch of lasers bouncing in different directions. I think. Maybe I'm inventing
I
that.
much prefer my archers in a fantasy setting.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Vexalia, I enjoy her in a superhero story where it's like, oh, this world has witches and mutants and psychics and aliens with the powers of a god. Here's a person who's not going to fight with guns or explosives or a sword that at least you can hold on to. He's going to fight with a bow and arrow. And it's technology, not magic, so it's a finite number of arrows.
He said, archers make do. Again, this is what I like about it, is that it's such a rife source of like comedy. In that show, they're running the gamut of like, what does it actually mean to be someone who fights crime in this world with a bow and arrow, with a limited amount of arrows in your bag? You've got to run around at the end of the fight and collect all your arrows because they're very hard to make and they're very expensive.
I'm also like, what if you don't get all your arrows? You're leaving behind this high tech that could be reverse engineered by bad people.
Now it's in the wrong hands. And you got to deal with that in the later storyline. I like it. And I like that it's like the show went, hey, we all know Hawkeye is the least impressive of these characters in this lineup of 6. Even Miss Romanov with her little pistol is still like a Russian assassin, right? She's KGB. She's got stuff going on. She will get like a laser trident in Infinity War to fight with. But then they go, hey, here's a little girl who saw this plucky man with a bow shoot a bunch of aliens and jump off a building with no thought for his own life and went, I want to be like that guy. You know? So I appreciate that. Heroism can come from anywhere if you're willing to pick up something and fight.
One of my favorite things about the later 2 seasons of Young Justice is that Artemis, who is, still unpowered, starts to fight with all sorts of different weapons. She doesn't give up her archery, but now she's got like a katana and tranquilizing darts and a bow staff. And I'm like, okay, so she's like she's a well-rounded martial artist as opposed to...
She was raised by Sportsmaster after all, the most proficient.
It made sense since her sister is someone who from season 1 has like been a master of... not Chinaway, Treasure. Chinaway is a different character.
I'm confusing. Here's what happened. She's voiced by Kelly Hu in Young Justice, and Kelly Hu plays Chen Naoe in Arrow. That's what happened in my head. Love her. Miss China White.
She shows up in a lot of stuff I watch. I wonder if I actually chose to follow her career, how much has she done?
Probably a lot.
Because I don't feel like I'm that diverse in the things that I watch, and yet I see her all the time.
Yeah, she's just one of those actors who be in stuff. She's Stacey Hirano in Phineas and Ferb, which we're constantly talking about. She's done a lot of voice roles.
She's in the Scorpion King, X-Men 2,
right.
The Vampire
She's
Diaries.
Lady Deathstrike in X-Men 2. What's her name? Mariko Yoshida?
Oyama.
No, Yuriko Oyama. I confused the two. Mariko Yoshida is in X-Men Wolverine. X-Men The Wolverine from 2013. She's the daughter of the villain.
Yes.
In that one.
That film. Another film which a lot of people treated like it was amazing. I was like, I had fun.
Did people treat that like it was amazing? I thought people universally did not like both the X-Men Origins Wolverine movies.
I think because of X-Men Origins, they were like, the Wolverine,
you can
the
only
ball was
go
in
up.
hell. You can only go up.
Here's the thing. I liked it well enough. I don't think it was a masterpiece. My sisters really liked that movie. They were like, this is our favorite movie of the X-Men franchise. And I was like, I cannot abide that.
Wow.
In good conscience. Please do not ever say that to me again. This... I did not know at the time that Logan was an IRL, like a weeb in praxis. He was the guy who goes to Japan all the time and adopts their culture. So I was very weirded out by that whole storyline. It's just like, why is he here? And why is he at the center of this storyline that's got nothing to do with him? Then I would read the comics and find out he does that all the time.
Constantly.
So
back-chatting armor in her own mother tongue when she thought, this white man won't hear me skinnering under my breath in
this
Japanese.
gaijin. And then he's like, actually, I speak the language, tits. It's like, all right. Love Armor. Is she? No, she's not the one who came back. It's a different character from a similar era. Noriko Yashida, who is different from the Yoshidas, I think.
So the thing is, because Marvel, largely written by Westerners, once the Yoshida and Yashida families were established, some writer one day decided, yeah, they're actually cousins of each other. And I was like,
Oh, because that's how it works. When you're cousins, you have similar surnames that are one letter off. I get it.
So canonically, Sunfire and that family, the Yoshidas, are distantly related to the infamous Yashida clan. And I'm like, all right.
Woof. Oh, so Mariko is a Yashida, and is Noriko related to her?
Noriko as in Surge?
Surge. Is she not a Yashida? Am I confusing her and Mariko's name?
I don't think she's a Yashida. No, I don't think her surname is Yashida.
What is she? Noriko. Ashida. Well,
Well,
listen,
when they discover
listen.
that one, they're gonna be like, she's also a cousin.
That's not my fault. That's the same name with the Y dropped off.
I will say I know that sometimes with East Asian names and surnames, you can get different spellings for the same thing once you translate it into English. Like Wong and Wang can be the same surname sometimes. It's been romanized in different ways. So maybe in Japanese, Yoshida and Yashida can be written in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense, but also
It just seemed weird. It was like the Japanese characters are all related.
they're all related, baby. All 4 of them from different stories in different time periods, and Wolverine knows them all. Looping all the way back to Game of Thrones, I think, to make the point that, like, in the moment, I didn't have the cognizance to be aware that, like, okay, critically, how am I absorbing this? I had not developed that as yet. I would say I still haven't. Sometimes I'll go into a thing, especially when I'm at the cinema, when I'm watching a movie, I'm not able to tell if I'll know if I enjoyed it or not, but I'm not able to tell if it's, like, critically good or not. I went to watch a horror movie recently called Longlegs, which I was like, I think I enjoyed this in the moment. And then I thought about the movie for, like, a couple hours, and I was like, wow, that movie kind of really tanks in the last act, which is a shame because it has some good setup. But alas,
Oh,
it
yes,
also
that
has
one.
Nicolas
Sorry,
Cage.
I was trying to remember what it was about because I know I've watched it. Yes. With Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, it's a horror movie.
Unrecognizable.
He's a serial killer, but then he's like an agent of the devil. And at the end of the movie, they're like, actually, the supernatural bit was all real. And I was like, oh. I thought this was a Silence of the Lambs situation. No, we're in like a James Wan like horror film. The dolls are actually magic. There's no secret here. I was very baffled. Maybe that's my fault for having an expectation that they were gonna like explain how this is happening logically. And they were like, no, it's the devil and magic. And I was like, okay, cool. Season 8 opens with Enzo and Damon snatching this couple off the road who are coming back from seeing a superhero movie.
Oh, yes, they make that joke. They're like, the superhero fatigue.
She's complaining, oh, there's too many characters. I can't remember their names. They were talking about superhero fatigue years before it actually happened. But also I was like, wow, some writer really got to purge their opinions on the matter through this character. I wonder who was really tired of their partner taking them to see superhero movies all the time.
Also, bold of you, CW Network, to allow this when you had your Arrowverse still going strong at that point.
Oh,
You look
yeah.
at the audience and be like, ugh, aren't you tired of superhero stories? Catch Arrow 1 hour after this episode concludes on the same channel.
Because they might have been hitting back being like, that show's more popular than ours now and we're sick of it. Because this happened a lot in the 90s. You'd see it in Charmed when reality TV was starting to like start up as like an actual thing that people respected and watched. There's an episode in Charmed that's talking about reality TV as like this supernatural enemy. And it was really funny, but also it was like, oh, the writers were hitting at reality TV shows that were taking up like screen time and accumulating ratings while being this like lesser media type. So it's very possible Vampire Diaries was going, ooh, the Arrowverse soaked up all our views and we're getting cancelled now.
I don't know, Vampire Diaries. Maybe if your writing had been better.
Listen, other shows kept it. Well, no, their writing also tanked. The show is just too popular.
Maybe that's just the thing about being on television. It's difficult to maintain quality for that long. Because sometimes you're writing about stuff that is poignant in a certain era.
And then it becomes dated so quick.
Yeah.
I think 5 seasons is where you should then just go, okay, guys, we're calling it quits. I think it's high enough that it feels like you've had a long road with the characters, but you're not overstaying your welcome. Unless you're going to be like, people always tout, I think Modern Family is a show that lasted 11 seasons and every season was good. Modern Family had plenty of problems. I think people have some rose-colored glasses looking back on that show. It was good, though. It was funny most of the time.
But I mean, they laugh at themselves as well, because the boyfriend is like, at least it's not another vampire movie, or like, at least the vampire movies are over. And I was like, all right, Vampire Diaries, where would you be without the Twilight craze?
Ooh, the way. Ooh, it's funny because Damon starts reading 50 Shades of Grey in this, and he's like, oh, I really like this book. And it's like, but weren't you reading Twilight at the beginning of the show and you hated it? What's happening?
It shows that he's been corrupted. Book. They probably forced Ian to do that scene because he was almost Christian Grey.
Bless him.
I've seen vampire stories where very often the vampire that turns someone, there's like a romantic thing there blended in with like a mentor-mentee thing, which can seem like parent to child.
The lines get blurred.
Yeah. I know in True Blood, vampires will colloquially refer to their like fellow progeny as siblings and their sires as parents. It's I always laugh about Godric appearing looking like 19 and telling 30-something Eric, my child.
Yeah. But there's a distinction. It's interesting you bring up True Blood, which is a show in which I'm trying to think if there's any situation in that show where someone creates a fledgling and is romantically involved with them. And nothing springs to mind immediately.
Certainly there's something, I would say, sexual at least, between Pam and Eric.
Would you? Interesting.
Like, I would say she's definitely very loyal to him, and I'm like, I would believe these two have been friends with benefits at some point.
Sure. There's definitely something inherently like sensual and intimate about the exchange of blood in True Blood, because the thing about drinking vampire blood in True Blood is you start getting very intimate dreams about the vampire who fed you, which makes for a lot of fun homoerotic asides in that show. They do it multiple times. It's so great. But I think of, I guess, spoilers for the first couple seasons of True Blood, if you want to go back and watch True Blood. Bill turns, oh my God, what a crime to forget her name. She's played by Deborah Ann Woll. She's such an icon. Hold on. I actually feel
the
like
redhead.
I'm a monster. Yes.
Her name's Jessica in the show.
Jessica! Oh my God.
Same actress who plays Karen Page in the Netflix Daredevil.
Yes, I love Deborah Ann Woll. She's excellent. She's Lao Fei in the God of War games, the Norse ones. I haven't watched True Blood in a long time. I don't remember most people's names. Bill turns Jessica, and it's very much a father-daughter relationship.
Yes.
Godric, as you've described with Eric, calls him child. It's very much a father-son thing going on there. There's some later on turnings I won't mention because I think you want to go back and watch the show, but even there, I'm like, there's never anything romantic about it. That's very interesting that True Blood is an outlier in that respect. Enzo's that main guy in Lied to Me, right? I forget his name. He's played by Patricia Arquette's husband from Medium.
No, we've had
it might be the other
before.
guy. You know I'd confuse those two actors.
He's played by Abomination from the MCU films. Yes.
Yes, he's played by Tim Roth. I'm always confusing him with Patricia Arquette's husband in Medium. I don't know why.
I believe Patricia Arquette's husband is in Medium is significantly taller than Tim Roth.
Taller, yes. Tim Roth's a quite small man. Which one of them plays Justin Prentice's grandfather in season 3 of 13 Reasons Why?
Is it his grandfather? I thought he was playing Bryce's dad. Am I confusing people?
Oh, now I don't remember.
Anyway, it's the Medium husband who's in 13 Reasons Why.
Oh, that's a shame. I hoped it wasn't him. I guess Tim Roth's too famous for 13 Reasons Why, to be fair. Anyway, why was I talking about him? Oh, because Lie to Me is a show about this guy played by Tim Roth who's very good at reading like facial tics and body language and all that stuff.
It was an interesting show. The first episode is so hectic. They're dealing with, I don't know what you would call it now, but at the time they would call it like multiple personality disorder with this like character who's only in that episode because I think one of her personalities witnessed a murder and is trying to tell the other facets of her psyche and she needs to know whether it's a lie or not, and it was very interesting. That was like the first episode.
Okay. And that show's from like what, 2007 or something?
I started watching it in 2009, but I don't know when it came out.
Wow, we were always getting things late, as you know. Oh, it did start in 2009. Yeah, you're correct. Oh, it had Mickey Pfeiffer. I know him just sort of ambiently. The one thing I've seen him in is the Divergent movies, where he's in the Dauntless management. He's the one who sells everybody out to get injected with that thing that makes them drones.
Oh.
He's like in charge of Dauntless.
The Divergent films.
Is that not remembering Divergent? I don't think it's a big loss. It's okay.
I think I've watched the second one.
Oh,
and bits of the first one.
You're not missing anything.
Are there two more or one more? Was there a third and fourth or just a third?
One more. The fourth one got cancelled so hard that even the like direct to TV release they were gonna do got canned.
Damn. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, and Miss Woodley herself was like, I'm out before they even tried that fourth one.
And
good for her.
Miss Woodley was like, I am Hazel Grace. You know? I don't need this.
I'm Big Little Lies, and you want me to do this nonsense? Get out. I'm Secret Life of the American Teenager. Thank you very much. Do you know who I am? But now she's like kind of weird, but we don't have to get into that.
I have no idea what she's been up to. I don't want to know.
Again, probably for the best.
It felt so Pretty Little Liars.
Yeah. Got a secret.
When they saw the
gotta
X's,
keep-
they were like, it's her.
It's her mark. AXOXO. No, that's Gossip Girl.
That's Gossip Girl.
What did A say? God, hers were more complex. You can never just like quote one off the top of your head unless you've been watching that show for years, which I didn't. I watched 2 seasons and dipped out.
I plan to one day watch it, at least in like a speed run sort of way, just because I'd like to know who A is. And if I Googled it, it wouldn't matter unless I've watched the show and understand the story.
Certainly. I'll tell you, it's very much a Gossip Girl is Dan situation.
Oh no!
It's not really a spoiler. It is the thing that is discussed most about Pretty Little Lies, that it's like, A, did not make sense. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but maybe that'll save you some time.
I've embraced the fun of just watching Gossip Girl now and accepting that Dan is Gossip Girl and that he's just ludicrous.
And that it makes no sense.
No,
Yeah.
well, that he's evil
Oh.
and just not okay.
Yeah.
The things he does as Gossip Girl, that he's a world-class actor who will perform even in rooms by himself.
By himself.
That-
For nobody. For the camera, because he's a fifth-dimensional being and he knows people are perceiving him.
He'll give himself pregnancy scares about women he's dating because Gossip Girl posted rumors about it and acts as though he's just received the information.
That's so wild. Oh, God. This is the kind of shit you get with network television, and we're losing recipes, okay? 22-episode shows. This is what they pull. Anyway. You've never once talked about the middling 2011 movie Immortals. What is this all about?
Featuring Joseph Morgan.
Featuring Joseph Morgan as a general of Hyperion, I think?
I think so.
Mickey Rourke of Whiplash fame in Iron Man 2. This is just a really bad time for movies, honestly. This is a Tarsem Singh movie, too, so it's like, it looks gorgeous. I wish I cared about anything happening. And it's about Greek gods.
Yeah, Kellen Lutz is there as Poseidon.
Listen, Daniel Sharman is there as Ares.
Yes!
A choice.
What do all these vampire actors do?
Vampire Diaries world characters are your Twilight characters. It's crazy. Henry Cavill is there, of course, but who cares? Whatever. Who's the girlie? Is it Gemma Arterton?
I don't. There's an actress who's Athena who I don't recognize.
Frida Pinto is the main girlie. Isabel Lucas is Athena. Luke Evans is Zeus, another vampire.
Wow, this movie is just chock full of them.
Vampire Central. It's kind of crazy, actually, that it's come up.
Their agents just saw Immortals on the,
And they were like,
the brief, and they were like,
We've got some people.
I got a role for you.
Actually, who was already... Yeah, Klaus is already Klaus at this point.
Yeah.
Joseph Morgan's already Klaus. Daniel Sharman is at least Isaac in Teen Wolf. He's not yet Cole Michelson in the original. Spoilers. Luke Evans is not yet Dracula.
But might have been shooting it by the time this film came out.
No, this movie's from 2011 and Dracula Untold is 2014.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking 2012.
Yeah, no, a little bit of time. Kellen Lutz has definitely has spent his entirety of the last 5 years.
This came out a year
being
before the
Emmett.
final Breaking Dawn.
Wild connections. Anyway.
If I had time to sit down and think about it, I could probably think of enemies to lovers ships that I've been fine with, or that I've enjoyed, maybe. Maybe not probably, possibly. I'll say possibly. But in terms of fake dating, that trope just bores me. It bores me because the conclusion is always obvious.
They date.
There's never going to be a story where they fake date and then they don't end up together.
Right. Give me that story. That'd be so fun. Because it's like, yeah, who would have imagined this very irresponsible dynamic does not make good foundation for a relationship? I can't think of... Well, I'm sure there's one. So the thing is, I always instinctually think of Pride and Prejudice, but that's because people build Pride and Prejudice as enemies to lovers for some reason. I don't think it is. Like, that whole dynamic is because there's two people who are, like, built to kind of misunderstand each other. You know, it's the whole theme of the show. Your pride, your prejudice. And then when they actually get to know each other, it's like, oh, hot damn. Actually, we've both been wildly stubborn and we actually work really well together. I like that. I think because there's a fusing of things, right? Where it's like, I only encounter, because I don't seek it out. I only ever encounter enemies to lovers where it's also happening within a love triangle and also happening along with like the bad boy like vibe, right? Those things are always happening at once and they're all things I hate. So maybe there's a version of maybe there's a version of this that's normal. And then maybe I might I like rivals to lovers. I like when people are in an academic setting and they're like academic rivals and it's like we're in competition, which is why we're kind of like at loggerheads. But it's like once you like step out of that context, it's like, oh, actually all this tension was all very like kind of sexy, you know? So that I like, but I don't think that's the same thing.
There's a brief flicker of that in Modern Family with Alex's recurring academic rival Sanjay.
Yes, I remember.
Toward the end of their senior year, as they're competing and trying to, I think they had exactly the same grades, and they were like coming up with all these arbitrary contests to try and see who's actually the best one. And then eventually he like lets her win when they have this foot race, and then she's like, "No, I don't want you to let me win." And he's like, "No, the truth is, I actually have really always like admired you, and I have a crush."
Right.
Like, "You're lying to distract me. You can beat me." And he's like, "No, you can win the race. Like it doesn't matter to me. I really like you."
That's the thing about that trope, right? Is like, for it to work, usually in an academic context or in some sort of competitive context, it's like there is a built-in respect and there's a built-in admiration because you recognize that's the only other person who could match me or beat me. And so I have to bring them down. It's built in that you're on equal footing. That's like the whole point of it. And people say that about enemies to lovers. I've yet to see it. It's always some dictator who's coming down on like the main character and then they fall in love. Every time I encounter enemies to lovers, that is what's happening. It's always some monster who's like super evil to the main character and then she's like, oh, but he's hot. And it's like, okay, well, I don't want to be here.
The one I always think of, which isn't even canon, is Zutara, which we won't get into because we'll be here all day. But I'm just like, son of the man who is committing genocide against her people.
Like, hey, brown girl, don't you want to date Hitler's son? He's kind of nice sometimes. What?
He gave you back that necklace one time and sarcastically said he'd save you from the pirates.
Isn't that just
then used you as bait for your friend.
Don't you want to marry him?
And people will be like, Zutara would have made so much sense. And I'm like,
I don't think it would have. I also appreciate that in that last season when they do come to like an understanding of each other, it's very much sibling vibes when you think about it, which works a lot better.
I love them being friends. It's nice. I even
Absolutely.
like that as the character he is, he's the one egging her on to her darkest impulses in that Southern Raiders episode when everyone's like, don't go out and murder the man who murdered your mother. It won't bring you peace. It'll make you bad.
And it's like, I'm not looking for peace.
Debatable. And Hugo's like, no, come, let's commit a homicide.
Let's murk that man. He doesn't deserve to live. And that's why they found candle wax in the girlie's ears, because if you don't know, during the Odyssey, Odysseus, when they were going through, I forgot what the bay is called, but it's where the sirens live. He had his crew put candle wax in their ears so they wouldn't hear the siren song and they would get through unharmed. He, though, it's typical white boy behavior, right? Didn't put candle wax in his ears, had his crew strap him down to the mast of his ship so he could hear the siren song and have it be like, I'm one of the few people who heard the siren song but survived. And so that's what Odysseus did.
Forgive me as I take it to a place of Percy Jackson.
Oh, please.
But his reasons for wanting to hear the siren song in traditional Greek myth are so shallow. He's just like, I just want to hear it so that I've heard it because it sounds really pretty and it's dangerous. Whereas in Percy Jackson, Annabeth is like, no, the siren song will reveal all these interesting deep secrets about life and about yourself.
Ooh.
If you can listen to it and survive. That's why I want to be strapped to
Annabeth does this?
Like Odysseus. Yeah, in Sea of Monsters.
Wow.
She's like, okay, guys, tie me down. I want to hear all the stuff. And she's like, no matter what I say, don't unstrap me. And predictably, once she's listening to the song and she's strapped up there, she's like begging and screaming to be let down so she can go to the Siren Island. And eventually she walks away with some wisdom or something from it. I don't know what it was for, but that was why she wanted to hear it. And I'm like, okay, at least they gave you good motivation.
I like that. Yeah, it's possible that exists in some incarnation of the myth. It reminds me of Odin, who is a character who very often will like go through strenuous things, communing with some sort of primordial force in order to gain more wisdom. I think that's the reason he doesn't have an eye.
Yeah.
And I think at some point he hangs himself to get to like the moment of death in order to gain like secrets about the universe.
He hangs himself for like several days and nights
in
order to get this wisdom.
So it very much is in that vein, which I like. I like that kind of communing with the universe, sacrificing a bit of yourself in exchange for knowledge, because it's only worth something if it must be paid for in kind.
One thing I do know about the Odyssey is that there's definitely no passage in which they're like sirens were servants of the devil. But we've been down that road.
Yeah.
Check the siren episode
We've
out.
been down that road, baby. She prepares to go on a trip to all of Africa. And he's like, you go, girl. You see that whole continent. 50 million people. That's not right. 50 billion? That's also not right.
There's
How
not
many
50
people in
billion
Africa?
people on the planet. There have
There's
never been 50
52
billion people.
continents. That's what I'm thinking of.
52 countries?
What did I say? Continents?
You said
What is
continents.
going on? It's 9 p.m. and I am sleep deprived. I don't know what I'm saying. 1.3 billion people as of 2021 in Africa, and she's going to say hi to all of them.
It's 54 countries, by the way. But
There you go. It's 52 American states.
no, there are
what is
only
going
50 Americans.
There are 50 and 2 like territories or subordinates or whatever. It's like Puerto Rico and
I'm not
Hawaii,
sure what
isn't
Puerto
it?
Rico is and why that's a thing. It's very weird because they don't get to vote, but they belong to America. So
Yeah, the powers of colonialism. They'll find every which way to name you something different that means we own you.
yeah.
Overseas territories. It's like, oh, islands you colonized and have not given back to the people. Got you. Because why am I looking at a map of France and there's blue dots nowhere near Europe? Get out of my face. Robert E. Lee? No, that's the book's one. What's the school in the show called?
It's just called Mystic Falls High, honestly.
Oh, that's so lame. Yeah, they go to Mystic Falls High.
I'm assuming that's a real life American thing because all these shows that are set in a very small town where there's one school, the school is always named after the town. It's like,
Yeah, that makes
Clark
sense.
Kent went to Smallville High. Kim Possible lives in Middleton and she goes to Middleton High.
True. Certainly the town I grew up in, I went to the high school that was named after the town, but there were many other high schools in that town, so that was very presumptuous of them, to be honest. They were like, actually, we're the premier high school in this region, and we dare you to say otherwise.
The city I lived in, the high school that was named after the city, was actually one of the, how do I say this politely, the schools with less funding?
Sure,
The
yeah.
schools with less privilege. So if you had mentioned going to the school named after our town, people would have been like, oh.
That was the high school in my immediate neighborhood. And it's specifically the high school where when we were choosing high schools in the area to go to, everyone would always say, well, if you can swing it, don't go to this school, go to the one further away because the one here has a really bad reputation. So, and we would always you could see the school from where I lived, from like my house. We would get at sit on the stoop and look over the larger neighborhood and see the kids like hanging out in the middle of the day in town, like not at
Oh,
school. And
no!
be like, I see.
Children, no.
So we
Go
will
get your
not be going
education.
there. Exactly. Parents were immediately like, so we're not sending you there, is what we're and we were not well-to-do, let me tell you. Not that I went to a well-to-do school, but it was certainly more expensive to go to where we went than to the school that we could walk to, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of America versus South Africa, are we bound by things like school districts and whatever? Because in America, depending which part of the city you live in, you can't send your kids to certain schools. Like, it has to be within proximity.
I don't think so because, well, how big is a district, I guess, here?
I don't know. I guess American major cities are much bigger than South African major cities.
Yeah. When they talk about districts, it's like the scale of it. And now that I think about it, people are insane going from like really far away. I'm thinking of like beyond, because our district when I was in high school covered so much area. Now that I'm thinking about it, it included schools that were an hour away from us.
Whoa. Which, I mean, it's pretty common in our country for some kids to have to travel an hour to get to school. Like
Exactly.
A bus,
Yeah.
2 taxis, and then walk another 2 kilometers.
That might be the reason why we don't do that, because it would be sort of unethical to do it given, apartheid spatial planning and all this stuff. It would be like, already kids are limited in having to travel to get to decent schools, to then try and limit those students from getting into those schools because of where they were born with our apartheid history would be insane to do. So I think that might be why we don't really do that. And that's why teachers were always saying, if you can't show up on time in the morning, then go to your township schools or whatever. I don't think that would have been a thing they could say if we weren't allowed to go to schools outside our district, So, did y'all ever get that?
I never heard that. I would hear more subtle things like, you guys are so lucky to be here, that now I look back on and I'm like,
Right.
who's lucky to be here? What did you
Yeah.
mean by that?
What do you mean by
If not here, then where?
Yeah, our kids would get a lot of, if you can't manage to shop on time, then you need to go to the school in your areas. And your areas was always very clear what they meant by that. So
Your areas looks
You know?
directly into camera.
Curb Your Enthusiasm theme starts playing. Anyways. Shame, Natalie Kelly's Twitter recently got hacked. I don't think she's been on Twitter for a while. And I, for whatever reason, was just scrolling because we follow her on the account after the Siren episode. I was like, oh, what are they up to? Oh, she's selling laptops for the cheap and she wants you to DM her? Are the residuals drying up? What's going on? I feel like we just had a strike. Damn.
Oh no.
Very unfortunate
Gosh.
for her, but she seems to be off Twitter.
Who is hacking these celebs' Twitters? There was that time that I forget the actor's name, but Steve Harrington from Stranger Things, his Twitter got hacked and someone was just like posting a bunch of slurs.
Oh, God.
And it was really obvious because people were like, there's no way that this well-known white actor
Right.
from a pretty successful TV show is just going to be on Twitter saying the N-word over and over again in the pre-Elon era.
No way the PR team is letting that happen. Exactly. Crazy. Not as famous, but probably famous in some circles. Matt Mercer of Critical Role fame got hacked a while back.
Oh.
I think it was last year. And it was, again, he was selling laptops. It was a really funny moment because the episode after it happened of Critical Role that we were watching was just like they kept making jokes about it. It was so good.
Spin-off episode ends. Email us at animalattackpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at animattackpod. That's at ANIM attackpod. Cheers.